Elena Foster had known this day was coming. "Elena, after 12 years with Nexaritech, we're restructuring your position," said Brielle Hammond, her tone clipped and formal, though her eyes flickered with unmistakable satisfaction. She sat across from Elena in a stark conference room, accompanied by Clay from HR, both clad in their usual bland professionalism and armed with a manila folder between them. "The company is shifting focus," Clay added smoothly, sliding the folder across the table like a parting gift. "You've made valuable contributions, but the innovation division is being merged under consumer integration." Elena gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. She didn't bother opening the folder. Inside would be the typical corporate consolation prize: 2 weeks severance for each year served, extended health coverage for 90 days, and a list of outplacement services that never helped anyone. "I understand completely," she said, her voice calm and unwavering. The relief on their faces was almost comical. They'd braced themselves for pushback, a breakdown, maybe even threats. She was, after all, a 51-year-old woman in an industry that glorified 20-something engineers and hustlers with TikTok resumes. What they didn't know was that Elena had been ready for this. She'd known since the day a confidential project memo had been mistakenly forwarded to her, one that detailed her planned exit, and the company's intention to quietly roll her proprietary code into their next-gen platform. Brielle cleared her throat, encouraged by Elena's compliance. "We'll need your badge, laptop, and phone before you leave Friday. Your team will be informed this afternoon." Elena's heart gave a small pang at the mention of her team. 7 extraordinary developers she had recruited, mentored, and led for over a decade, people who had helped her build the real backbone of Nexaritech's success, the adaptive data engine that powered their entire AI-driven customer insights suite. Software now licensed to hundreds of major retailers and financial institutions. "Understood," Elena said simply, standing up. "Is there anything else?" A beat passed. Brielle and Clay exchanged a glance, visibly unsettled by her calm. "No, that's it," Brielle said. "Thank you for being professional." Elena gave a faint smile, walked out, and made her way back to her office. She passed the glass-enclosed executive conference room on the way. Inside, CEO Miles Channing was in full theatrical mode, waving at a screen that displayed revenue projections and market growth charts. The same Miles who'd stood on stage last fall, accepting a Tech Innovation Award for the very engine she built, crediting our brilliant product teams, without ever naming her. Back in her office, Elena closed the door, took a deep breath, and pulled out her personal phone. She sent one text. "It's set. Friday's my last day." The response came within seconds. "Perfect. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize." She looked at her calendar. Wednesday. She smiled. Friday, she'd walk out of Nexaritech for good. Monday? That would be something else entirely. That evening, Elena arrived at Valmont, an elegant French bistro tucked into a quiet street in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood, far from the sleek minimalism of Nexaritech's downtown tower. Gregory Lane stood as she approached the table. CEO of Revexa Labs, Nexaritech's fiercest competitor, and the only one with a real shot at redefining machine learning infrastructure. "Right on time," he said with a grin. "I always am," Elena replied, settling into the seat across from him. They toasted with glasses of Syrah as Gregory pulled out the final version of the partnership agreement. Elena would come aboard as Chief Strategy Officer, with full ownership over her algorithm and a team of her choosing. Nexaritech had underestimated her. They'd thought she'd disappear quietly, take her severance, and fade into the past like so many other women in tech. But Elena Foster had spent too many years building brilliance in the shadows. Monday, the spotlight would be hers. And this time, she wasn't leaving her name off anything. Revexa Labs, Nexaritech's biggest competitor, wasn't flashy about their moves, especially not Gregory Lane. He'd reserved a private dining alcove at Valmont, tucked away behind delicate Japanese silk screens and candlelit shadows, far from prying eyes and nosy industry chatter. "They actually did it," Greg said, shaking his head once we ordered. "I figured they might," I replied, sipping my sparkling water. But cutting the person who built their core technology? That's a special kind of short-sighted. Miles never understood what you created, he said. I nodded. He saw the interface, the pitch deck, the market potential. But the real innovation? The architecture underneath? That was just back-end stuff to him. It had almost been poetic, how Nexera Tech had fumbled the very thing they tried to steal. 3 months ago, while reviewing some legal filings out of habit, I noticed something strange. Nexera Tech had never actually filed the patent application for my adaptive data engine, the very algorithm that powered their entire AI analytics platform. When I asked about it, legal brushed it off as an oversight and promised to take care of it. But the tone was off, too smooth, too rehearsed. So I dug deeper. In the internal archives, buried in a locked strategy memo, I found it, a plan to roll the engine into the company's IP portfolio without inventor attribution. The idea was simple: ease me out, finalize the patent under company ownership, and claim the technology as fully in-house. What they didn't know was that I'd already been working on refinements to the algorithm, on my own time, using personal equipment, outside the scope of my employment contract. Those refinements? They improved processing efficiency by 43%, and I had every log, timestamp, and prototype to prove it. Last month, with the help of Greg's IP attorney, I filed for a patent under my own name. The application flew through, thanks to airtight documentation and a compelling technical leap forward. Now, Greg slid a slim folder across the table. All the paperwork is finalized, he said. Once you sign, Revexa Labs has exclusive licensing rights. The press release goes out Monday morning, announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. I opened the folder and reviewed the deal again, though I knew it by heart. A 7-figure signing bonus. Substantial equity. Ongoing royalties from every product built on my algorithm. A future, finally on my terms. What do you think Miles' face will look like when he finds out? Greg asked, barely suppressing a grin. I'm not worried about him, I said honestly. I'm thinking about my team. They don't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. Greg nodded. Already handled. We've got spots for all 6, senior roles, generous raises, flexible terms. If they want to come, they're in. Relief settled over me like a soft blanket. I signed the final page, closed the folder, and set it down with quiet finality. In one elegant move, I had reclaimed my work, protected my people, and opened the door to a future that was mine. To new beginnings, Greg said, raising his glass. And to owning every part of the journey, I replied, clinking mine to his. Monday was going to change everything. To the value I added, I said, clinking my glass gently against Greg's. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur: exit interviews, documentation dumps, transition meetings, and half-hearted goodbyes. I stayed composed the entire time. Professional. Polite. Efficient. Still, the whispers traveled quickly. Administrative assistants shot me sympathetic glances in the hallway. A few junior developers worked up the courage to approach me privately, some awkwardly asking for LinkedIn recommendations, others simply saying how much they'd learned from me. I documented everything, every project, every system handoff, every password. I didn't miss a single detail. Nexera Tech would realize soon enough just how deeply they depended on me, and how rare it was to find someone who didn't leave behind a mess. But my meticulous notes weren't an act of kindness. They were evidence. Evidence that I'd exited in good faith. Evidence that I'd done everything by the book. Evidence that the company's treatment of me had been calculated, while my departure was clean. My final exit interview was Friday at 3 p.m. Denise from HR read through the script with robotic detachment. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of Nexera Tech, she said, sliding a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied smoothly. Anything developed within the scope of my employment, using company resources, during company time. I made sure to stress those qualifiers, deliberate and clear. But Denise was too busy checking her boxes to notice. And you affirm that you retain no copies of proprietary company materials? I've taken nothing that belongs to Nexera Tech, I confirmed truthfully. The patent was mine, and every improvement had been developed independently, far outside of their jurisdiction. Back in my office, I packed my things slowly. A framed photo of my daughter at her college graduation. A row of lanyards from 15 years of conferences. The coffee mug my team gave me last Christmas, with the words Data Whisperer printed in faded script. I was carefully wrapping a small award I'd once received for innovative contribution to product excellence, the very algorithm now at the center of my new role, when I heard her. Just checking that everything's clear for your departure, said Brielle Hammond, leaning against the doorway in that forced casual stance she used when trying to appear friendly. Crystal clear, I replied, layering tissue paper around the glass plaque. You know, Elena, she continued, with mock sympathy, these restructuring decisions are never personal. Miles just feels the company needs to move in a more youthful direction. I met her eyes directly. I completely understand. Business is business. There must have been something in my tone, measured, but sharp, that gave her pause. For a split second, her confidence wavered. But she dismissed it just as quickly. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 51-year-old woman possibly do, right? Will you be taking some time off? She asked, her voice dipped in false concern. Actually, no, I said, slipping the last item into the box and closing the flaps. I start Monday. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. That's quick. Anything interesting? I smiled, lifting the box in my arms. Very. A leadership position. I'm quite excited about it. She nodded, clearly caught off guard, already trying to figure out where I was going, and too late to stop it. Monday was coming fast. And so was the press release. Well, good luck with that, Brielle said, already mentally moving on to whatever damage control she thought might come next. I didn't reply. I just nodded once and walked out of Nexera Tech's glass tower for the last time, my keycard surrendered, my belongings in a simple cardboard box tucked under one arm. Outside, the city air was brisk and clear. I turned around for a moment, looking up at the building where I had poured 15 years of my life. The top floor was still lit, the executive conference room aglow with a late evening meeting. No doubt, they were already discussing how to divide up my responsibilities between a group of younger, cheaper hires. What they didn't know was that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be the site of a full-blown corporate firestorm. Monday morning arrived bright and unshakably clear. I dressed with care, slipping into the charcoal gray suit I'd bought specifically for this moment. Sharp lines. Confident tailoring. Power, personified. At exactly 7:30 a.m., the Precision Systems town car arrived at my building. The driver greeted me with a quiet nod and opened the door. By 7:45, I was stepping into my new corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the lake and a skyline that now belonged to my future. Greg met me at the door with a smile. Press release went out at 7. Industry newsletters are already picking it up. Communications is tracking reactions in real time. The announcement was flawless. Strategically engineered, just like the systems I built. Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary data engine, welcomes creator Dr. Elena Foster as Chief Innovation Officer. It highlighted my full background. Named me, as the sole inventor of the patented technology. Outlined our integration plan for future products. And most importantly, made one point crystal clear. Any company using my algorithm, including Nexera Tech, would now need to negotiate licensing terms with Precision Systems. At exactly 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text. Complete chaos here. What did you do? Miguel. I couldn't help but smile. Miguel had been my lead developer for 5 years. Brilliant. Loyal. Check your personal email. Offers are waiting for all 6 of you. By 9:30, Nexera Tech's headquarters, just 8 miles away, was in full meltdown mode. According to Miguel's updates, Victor Channing had walked into the office that morning to find the company's general counsel and CFO already waiting outside his office, phones in hand. The industry announcement had landed like a bomb in their inboxes. Board members were dialing in from all over the country. The legal team was pulling every contract, every clause, every version of the algorithm's documentation. Miguel's texts came in rapid bursts. They just rolled in the servers from the research floor. Full forensic audit. Everyone's panicking. Legal wants to know if there are any copies of your raw code. Victor's pacing like he's about to have a stroke. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee as the sunlight poured across my new desk. I could practically picture the scene, desperate executives scrambling, trying to unwind a mess they didn't even understand until it was too late. They hadn't just underestimated my work. They'd underestimated me. And now, the reckoning had begun. The image was easy to conjure, Victor pacing the executive conference room, demanding answers from betrayal and legal, his voice rising with every sentence. The stock market was already reacting, investors hate surprises, and Monday's press release had delivered a big one. Nexera shares had dropped 7% since opening. Meanwhile, Precision Systems had surged 12%. The industry understood exactly what had happened. And they knew what it meant. At 10:45 a.m., an email popped up in my inbox. From Victor Channing. Subject: misunderstanding. Elena, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss this further. The desperation practically radiated off the screen. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team with a note, no response from me. Please handle. By noon, the entire tech sector was buzzing. 3 major industry journals had reached out requesting interviews, calling it a bold strategic maneuver and a game changer for enterprise analytics. How are you feeling? Greg asked as he poked his head into my office. I looked up from my desk, where the sun cast perfect morning light across crisp blueprints and product plans. Validated, I said simply. 15 years of being told to be grateful for a seat at the table, while watching others take credit for my work. That seat was never enough. My new executive assistant, Charmaine, appeared in the doorway with a clipboard. Dr. Foster, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room. Also, Nexera CEO has called 4 times in the last hour. I didn't even flinch. Let him know I'm in meetings all day. Our legal department will reach out to discuss licensing options later this week. As I walked toward my first leadership session as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Miguel. Board just called emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. P.S. We all accept. When can we start? I grinned. That made it official. My team, the people who'd built this thing with me, were joining me at Precision Systems. Monday would be their first day. By Tuesday morning, Nexera had fully grasped the magnitude of their mistake. Their flagship platform, AccountSphere, relied entirely on my adaptive engine to function. Without a licensing agreement, they were stuck. Their only options were both painful. Negotiate with Precision Systems, where I now held executive authority. Attempt to rebuild their core infrastructure from the ground up, an effort that would take years and cost millions. Miguel's next text came in just after lunch. Victor's calling an all-hands at 2 p.m. Rumor is they're going to sue you. Also, it's my last day. Can't wait for Monday. I forwarded the message to legal. Their reply came within minutes. Let them try. Your documentation is airtight, every log, timestamp, and system audit clearly shows your development was done independently. We're ready. Back in my office, I sat down and opened my laptop. My name, Dr. Elena Foster, was already printed across the top of internal memos, product roadmaps, and R&D proposals. The respect I received at Precision Systems was immediate and undeniable. It was the kind of environment I'd dreamed of building. Now, I didn't just belong to it. I was leading it. And Nexera? They were just starting to realize they hadn't lost an employee. They'd lost their future. The contrast was almost jarring. At Nexratech, the last few years had been a slow erosion of respect. I'd speak in meetings and get nods, only for my ideas to be rephrased and pitched as original by male colleagues moments later. My experience was quietly diminished, my age treated like an expiration date. Here, it was different. When I spoke, people listened. My track record wasn't just acknowledged, it was celebrated. My age wasn't a liability. It was leverage. The engineering team has started implementing your efficiency improvements, Greg mentioned during our afternoon strategy briefing. Early testing is showing a 51% performance increase, better than we projected. I allowed myself a small smile. I had a few refinements I never shared with Nexratech. After I learned they planned to eliminate my position, I didn't see the point in giving them my best work. Greg chuckled. Their loss. Our gain. He passed me a folder. Speaking of which, our first licensing inquiry came in this morning. Not from Nexratech, they're still in denial. But Dataflow Systems reached out. They don't want to get caught in the crossfire. At 3:30, my phone buzzed. Another message from Miguel. Just finished the all hands. Victor tried to sound confident, said they'd fight to protect our proprietary technology, but the room felt tense. Half the dev team already updated their LinkedIn. Someone asked if the patent was ever filed properly. Marjorie looked like she might faint. Victor cut the Q&A short after that. By Wednesday, the ripple effects were undeniable. 2 of Nexratech's major clients had already contacted Precision Systems, asking about switching from AccountSphere. They were worried about the platform's stability now that its core algorithm was no longer theirs. Our stock climbed another 8%. Nexratech's? Still falling. That afternoon, I received a call from a number I recognized. Denise, HR. The same woman who had once handed me my severance papers like they were coupons. Elena, she began, her voice tight and formal, I'm calling to discuss the, situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding ownership rights. I don't think there's any misunderstanding, I replied evenly. My employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time, with my own resources, is mine. The patent documentation supports that fully. There was a long silence. Well, she continued, choosing her words carefully, Victor was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss potential options. Any discussions will need to go through Precision Systems' legal department now, I said. I'm sure they'd be happy to arrange a meeting to talk licensing terms. The silence stretched. Then a quiet sigh. I'll pass that along. That same afternoon, I stood at the head of the Precision Systems boardroom, leading my first formal presentation to the board of directors. I outlined the company's innovation roadmap, with my algorithm at its heart. This time, I wasn't hidden behind someone else's title. I wasn't asked to just take notes. I stood confidently, center stage, as the architect of our future. Greg gave me a nod from across the table. The kind of nod that said, you belong here. By Friday, just 1 week after leaving the company that had underestimated me for far too long, I was exactly where I was always meant to be. And I was just getting started. Exactly 1 week after I walked out of Nexratech's headquarters for the last time, the company was in full-blown crisis mode. Their stock had dropped 23% since the opening bell on Monday, enough to trigger alarm bells among their biggest investors. Concerned calls were pouring in, and industry analysts were publishing scathing op-eds with titles like, Can Nexratech Survive the Algorithm Crisis? And How One Strategic Blunder May Cost a Tech Giant Everything. Through my own network, I learned that Victor had finally admitted to the board just how deep the hole was. Nexratech now faced 2 options, neither appealing. License my patented data engine from Precision Systems, at terms that would decimate their already thin profit margins. Rebuild AccountSphere from scratch without infringing on my IP, an effort that would take years and drain millions in R&D. They've started interviewing for a whole new development team, Miguel told me during our Friday video call. He was days away from officially joining my division. Victor's telling the board they'll replicate your system in 6 months. I laughed, genuinely laughed. The original took me 3 years, I said. And that was with full architectural knowledge, domain expertise, and a team I personally built. Exactly, Miguel replied. No one's buying his timeline, especially not after we posted our coordinated resignation letter. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, Nexaroteca's legal department finally reached out to Precision Systems to begin a conversation about licensing options. Following the strategy we had mapped out in advance, our legal team responded swiftly, with terms that were completely fair by legal standards, and exquisitely painful from a corporate pride perspective. 3 times the standard industry licensing rate. Plus, a full, public acknowledgement naming me as the sole inventor of the patented technology. Greg and I reviewed the proposal together in his office. They'll choke more on the public credit than the licensing cost, he said, sipping his coffee. Victor's ego won't let him admit he forced out the person who built their core product. Then let them rebuild, I said. Every day they waste trying to duplicate what I created gives us another day to extend our lead. By the following Monday, just 10 days after Nexarotec let me go, I stood in front of my newly formed innovation team. All 6 engineers from my original group were seated around the table, Miguel, Anita, and the others, now officially part of Precision Systems. The energy in the room was electric as we began mapping out the next evolution of the algorithm, version 2.0. This is how development meetings should feel, Anita said as we wrapped up a round of ideation. No politics. No explaining basic concepts to executives who don't even understand the acronyms. That's the difference between being valued, I said, smiling, and being seen as replaceable. As we finished the session and I gathered my notes, Charmaine appeared in the doorway with a tablet in hand. Dr. Foster, she said, eyes wide. There's been a significant development at Nexarotec. The board just announced an emergency leadership change. I raised an eyebrow. Victor? She nodded. He's out. Effective immediately. I allowed myself one deep, steady breath. The empire that had underestimated me was crumbling. And this time, I wasn't watching from the sidelines. I was building something better, something mine. Channing is stepping down, effective immediately. The headlines spread like wildfire. Within hours, every major tech publication had picked it up. The official statement was diplomatic, something about leadership transitions and new strategic direction, but the real story was obvious to anyone watching. Nexaroteca's board had lost confidence in Victor after the catastrophic patent oversight that jeopardized their flagship platform. He wasn't the only one gone. Brielle Hammond had been quietly removed from her position as head of strategy, and their general counsel was out the door before the afternoon even ended. That evening, I received an email from someone unexpected, Richard Donovan, the newly appointed interim CEO of Nexarotec. It wasn't desperate like Victor's message from the week before. It was measured, professional, and, more importantly, respectful. From Richard Donovan. Subject, licensing discussion. Dr. Foster. Congratulations on your new role. I've been brought in to help Nexarotec navigate our current challenges. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing agreement for your patented technology. We're prepared to publicly acknowledge your contributions and make appropriate amends for the missteps of previous leadership. Would you be open to meeting next week? I forwarded the message to Greg with a single line, Phase 1, complete. His reply came within minutes. Beautifully executed. The board is celebrating your first major win. Looks like Nexarotec is finally learning how expensive it is to underestimate innovation and innovators. 3 months later, I found myself seated on stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The auditorium was packed, industry leaders, journalists, developers, and students filled every seat. It wasn't lost on me that just last year, I'd attended this same conference as part of Nexaroteca's delegation. I'd been seated at the back of the hall, watching Victor stand at the podium presenting my work, without so much as a mention of my name. Now, it was my name they were applauding. And now, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker, the conference organizer said, smiling from the mic, Dr. Elena Foster, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the adaptive engine transforming enterprise data systems across industries. The applause was steady, substantial, and deeply validating. Thank you, I began, once at the podium, surveying the sea of curious, expectant faces. Today, I want to talk about innovation, ownership, and why intellectual contributions must be protected, regardless of where they come from, or who makes them. I walked them through the evolution of the algorithm, technical details, design philosophy, and performance metrics. But I also layered in something more, the importance of recognition, of ethical leadership, of protecting the very people who drive innovation forward. I never named Nexera Tech. I didn't have to. The message was clear. Afterward, during the reception, a group of young women engineers came over, eager, bright, and full of questions. Dr. Foster, one of them said, her voice slightly shy but resolute, could we ask you for some advice? I smiled, already reaching for an extra chair. Of course, I said. Let's talk. One of them, barely 30, confided softly, your story changed how I work. I started keeping detailed logs of every development I do on my personal time. Version control, timestamps, independent prototypes, the works. Smart, I replied, smiling. Your innovations deserve protection. Never let anyone make you feel replaceable. As the reception wound down and the evening lights softened around us, I checked my phone and saw an industry news alert. Nexera Tech officially confirms licensing agreement with Precision Systems. Company acknowledges Dr. Elena Foster as sole inventor of adaptive data engine. My name, there in black and white. Recognition at last. Nexera Tech's stock had finally stabilized, though it remained significantly lower than it had been when I walked out their doors a year ago. Exactly 1 year to the day after I was told to clean out my desk, I was seated in my spacious corner office at Precision Systems, reviewing the latest quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, we had launched 3 groundbreaking products built on my algorithm. Together, they had captured massive market share, directly cutting into Nexera Tech's once dominant position. A knock on the door pulled me from the report. Greg stepped in, a bottle of champagne in one hand and 2 glasses in the other. Happy anniversary, he said with a grin, placing the glasses on my desk. The board wanted me to deliver this personally, before the public announcement goes live. He handed me a sleek black folder with a single page inside. I read the bold headline twice, just to let it sink in. Precision Systems officially surpasses Nexera Tech in market valuation, first time in company history. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't feel smug. What I felt was a deep, grounded sense of satisfaction. That's what happens when you value innovation properly, I said. Greg popped the champagne and poured 2 generous glasses. Just as we toasted, my assistant stepped in with a silver envelope. Special delivery, she said, placing it on the desk. Inside was an invitation, elegant, crisp, and addressed to me. Women in Technology Annual Leadership Summit. Keynote speaker invitation, Dr. Elena Foster. Topic, owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. Greg glanced at it and chuckled. You become something of an icon, you know. The story about the executive who didn't realize what she had until she was gone, it's a case study now. Corporate boardrooms everywhere are rethinking how they treat their talent. He wasn't wrong. Richard Donovan, who had remained as Nexera Tech's CEO after the fallout, had instituted sweeping reforms. Word had it their new inventor recognition policies were modeled directly after the internal program I'd built at Precision Systems. It was never about revenge, I said, raising my glass. It was about recognition. About reminding this industry that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from people, real people, who deserve real credit. To proper recognition, Greg said, clinking his glass gently against mine. The sun filtered through my office windows, golden and soft, casting long shadows across a room built on resilience and resolve. At 56, I had finally found what had eluded me for most of my career, not just success, but something far more meaningful. Acknowledgement. And my name? It was exactly where it belonged. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking this journey with me. I never imagined that the moment I was asked to turn in my badge and pack up my desk would be the beginning of something greater. But here I am, no longer silenced, no longer sidelined. And now, I want to hear from you. If my story resonated, if it reminded you of your own challenges, your own battles to be seen, leave a comment below. Tell me what you're fighting for. Tell me what you're building, protecting, or reclaiming. I read every word. I feel every story. Let's support one another, because when we speak up, we make space for others to do the same. If you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or like your contributions were taken for granted, hear me clearly, you are not invisible. Keep your receipts. Document your process. Trust your instincts. And never be afraid to bet on yourself. Sometimes, the moment they count you out is the exact moment you step into your power. To all the engineers, creators, leaders, and thinkers out there, your work matters. Your ideas are worth protecting. And your voice deserves to be heard, loud and clear. Don't wait for permission to own your brilliance. Leave a comment for me. Share your story. Ask a question. Or simply write, I'm here, too. Because this community we're building? It's built on resilience. It's powered by truth. And if my story has become a case study, let it be one that proves this. Innovation isn't just about technology. It's about people. And the moment you choose to value yourself, really value yourself, is the moment everything begins to change. Let's talk in the comments. I'll see you there. Elena Foster.